One of the things is to talk to yourself in third person, like, Laura, let's think about this. And like, and talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. Because if you talk to yourself like the ways that we can be critical of ourselves, like you would never talk to your best friend like that, ever. So why are we talking to yourself like that?
Welcome to Oxygen for Educators, part of the Ripple Maker Project. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle Kinder, and you'll meet Chris Kent Phelps in just a bit. It's our hope to bring you thought-provoking, unscripted conversations full of actionable ideas to fuel your important work in the world. Thanks for tuning in. This space is for you. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Michelle. Happy Friday.
Indeed, same to you. Tell everyone what they're in for, because I am a fan of Laura Lockhart as a person and as a thought partner, and I felt like she offered so much actionable, interesting stuff in this interview.
She did. I absolutely loved it. And at one point, she gobsmacked you. That was one of the most fascinating things to me, was to watch your reactions when she dropped these like really insightful intellectual bombs. So I'm really excited to talk to you about some of them.
I've never heard gobsmacked you. Like, would that be a verb? I'm a little rusty on my...
You were gobsmacked. Yes.
No,
Yes. There was just this awe, and it was in the best possible way, because you were in your like nerd out mode. You were so excited to have like a new thing to think about. So I just really loved it. She was awesome.
She has that effect on me for sure. Well, let's
hear
from
me too.
her. Tell everyone her bio.
Okay, I'll do it. So she's been in education for over 20 years, and we should say Dr. Laura Lockhart. I'm beginning to feel like an underachiever because we've had quite a few people with doctorate titles lately.
100% you are. Just kidding.
You do have the Fridays. Okay, I loved that she said that she and her husband both viewed education as a shared passion and path. And I thought that probably equipped her to be a coach's wife, which is hard in itself. So I love that she pointed that out. She's been a teacher, an assistant principal, district office administrator in both curriculum instruction and student services, and currently serves as Director of Learning and Development for Meteor Education, which specializes in creating pro-social learning environments. And I thought Ms. Lopez really needs to know about Meteor Education because of what they specialize in and her desire for flexible seating. Dr. Laura Lockhart most recently earned her doctorate of education in organizational leadership from ACU with a dissertation that's my love language, and I know we're going to talk about that. She has a passion for curriculum and data, but always knew she couldn't advance those causes if, as she says, we didn't love each other. We need to love each other and create this space so that we can then learn. That was just, I loved it. And I was so excited to know that she's an Oxygen for Educators listener. I appreciated that feedback so much. Thank you, Dr. Laura, for sharing that. And my takeaway was just this interview to me was a masterclass in self-reflection and handling conflict. So I think listeners are in for a big treat. I would have your notepads ready if you can.
Awesome. Let's hear, and we'll be back to unpack.
Okay.
Hi, Laura. Wait, I'm going to restart and say hi, Dr. Laura.
Oh,
it's
thanks.
Official.
It is official. It is official. Thank you, Michelle.
I'm so happy that we're getting to do this conversation. I can't wait for folks to know you and appreciate you like I do. And we were kind of halfway joking, but you did just finish your doctorate, which is basically akin to childbirth.
Yes, it was. And fun fact, I finished my doctorate and became a grandma in the same month.
So, that's awesome.
Yeah.
2 glorious births.
It was 2 glorious births. It was amazing. And it's been something that I wanted to do a long time, is get my doctorate, and uh, the timing became right, and then again, I became a grandma in the same month. So it's been amazing. It's been amazing. I've been able to focus in on some of those grandma things as well. So,
Yeah, that's really good timing to kind of
mhm,
close that chapter while a new one's
mhm,
opening. I love it.
mhm, mhm.
Well, let's start by having folks get to know you. Maybe tell your story and, in particular, why you care so much about educators.
Oh, well, thank you, Michelle. And again, I'm thrilled to be here. I have become an Oxygen for Educator fan. It has been an incredible space that you all are providing for educators, and I learn something every single week. So my journey began many years ago. Told you I'm a grandma. And so I was a teacher, and well, let me start before that even. I was raised by a librarian and a pastor slash chaplain, and they we settled in the DFW area. I went to Lake Worth. And so my mom was the librarian there. My dad was working at Baylor Medical Center. I went to junior college instead of straight to college, and that's where I met my future husband. So when we finally ended up at Sam Houston State, because we both wanted to be teachers, everybody thought we were high school sweethearts, and I said, nope, we're junior college sweethearts. And so we both got our education degrees. He comes from a family of educators, Jordan, my husband, and we both knew that that's what we wanted to do. That was our passion and our path. And so began, as a teacher. I didn't teach that long. I taught for about 6 years in different settings. I joke that Jordan took me on the Central Texas tour as he was, because he's coaching. So we moved around a bit.
Yes, yes, yes. Very normal
And so
scenario.
finally we settled in the DFW area, in the Keller area. And so I spent most of my career in Keller, and raised my children in Keller. That was my village that, helped me with our family. And in Keller, I had the opportunity to serve as a teacher, assistant principal, principal, district office administrator.
Wait, wait,
Uh,
wait, wait. Teacher, assistant principal, principal, district office. And then where were you going next?
well, I was going to say, when I was in the district office, I did both curriculum instruction and then also student services.
Wow.
Now I have moved into the director of learning and development for media education, which is kind of that intersection of really continuing to serve, teachers, and helping them with creating innovative learning environments and spaces where, relationships can continue to thrive, and being able to collaborate, pro-social
Mm.
learning spaces. And so I work with media and leadership development, as well as learning and development in different areas that people, adult learning. And it's just been a beautiful way to take the things that I know as far as education is concerned, and move it into adult learning in serving in this way. So.
You've sat in almost every seat there is in
Mm.
education at some point.
Close to it, except for superintendent. Did
Yeah,
not
yeah.
sit in that
Like
seat.
I'm out.
Uh, but I will say, as I had such incredible experiences, like it was 21 years in Keller and 28 years total. And the experiences that I had and the things that we were able to accomplish together were amazing. You know, one of the things is, I was thinking about, telling my story and education, how important it is to me. Um, there were just so many experiences as, whenever I served as a principal, when I served as an assistant principal, in that, working to create collaboration with the adults. The relationships were the most important thing in as far as our students were concerned. And I always just leaned into that as much as I loved it, instruction and curriculum and data analysis. It was all about relationships first, with the adults in the room, as well as with our children. And so something that I was thinking about, again, I've been a part of the Oxygen for Educators space, and I just listened to Dr. Helm out at Wiley. And my last 5 years was area director of student services. And I would have given anything to have been able to collaborate with her, and uh, the way that she approaches that position, with being proactive rather than reactive. I had the very similar situation, and where the superintendent came to me, and we were working through student services, and I was like, that's I'm not sure that's because it's like a firefighter. Sometimes there's a lot of conflict that comes through. Uh, Investigations, discipline hearings, like that is no. I'm more proactive, but I did similar things to what she did, as far as focusing on the restorative practices, the positive behavior intervention supports, trauma informed instruction, all of those sorts of things to help build those cultures that were so important, so that we wouldn't get to those other things. So,
and relationships being at the center in some ways is like the nucleus of proactive discipline, or whatever the word would be. How did you come to know? Was it intuitive? Was it a mentor? Was it your family? Like, how did you know relationships were at the center of all of this?
As a teacher, it became, because we don't, in in preparation programs, you don't get a whole lot of this kind of information and knowledge. It's a lot of pedagogy. But my first experience out at on Alaska, it was a K-8. Everybody thought I worked in Alaska. I did not. I worked in on Alaska. It's out in East
It does
Texas.
sound very. It sounds very seriously. Whoa! Wait. What? Oh.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It wasn't Alaska. It was on Alaska. But my first, just stepping into the classroom, it was immediate to me that it was more about these little people, and my relationship with them, and how important it was to, I could be the smartest, most instructionally sound teacher ever, but I was never going to get through or build any sort of culture or space in my classroom if we didn't love each other. And I think I was doing circles and morning meetings before they were cool. We'd just sit in the floor, and we'd have our little talking stick or talking ball or whatever it was. And we would, just making sure that everybody had space and that I was listening to them. Michelle, it just is one of those things that just, obviously I was raised by people who were socially in tune, and relationships were so important to them, that I walked in and I was like, this is the priority, is that, we need to love each other and create this space so that we can then learn together.
What did you notice about your own well-being when you were working from that relationship-centered place versus when you got off-center and kind of lost your way a little, if you ever did?
Oh, yes, Michelle. I think that's part of being human and real. And honest is that, you will lose your way.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it was always, and when I lost my way, it was whenever the focus was on the wrong thing. And I was working with a coach just the other day and on a few things. And it's sometimes, we have our strengths, our things that we're really, sometimes when we overuse those strengths and we're too far into, let's say, achiever or whatever it is, like that's when I'm not well. I'm overusing my strengths. I'm not well.
Oof.
I'm not being mindful of where I am in the world and what people need from me. And so that's what is extremely important to me, is that I stay grounded, but I'm not always grounded. It's something that I'm always continuously working on.
I don't know why I'm having an emotional reaction to what you just said, but I think it's because it's different than how we usually talk about it. Like, I think often when we've lost our way, we interrogate, how am I working out of my weaknesses?
Mm-hmm.
And what you just said is, when you lose your way, sometimes it's because you're overusing your strengths and you get out of balance. Like, I think that's such an interesting lens on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see it in myself immediately. I know exactly what you mean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It will get me in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It will get me in
deplete us in ways that doesn't get talked about like it gets talked about that we get depleted when we're not working in our strengths, but it doesn't get talked about that we get depleted when we overuse our strengths as much. That's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling really insecure that Katie's listening, because I'm thinking she's like, oh, I can tell you 10 ways you overuse your strengths that drive me crazy. I'll have to give her time and space to fill me in later on what she notices. Mercy. That's really helpful. Thank you for that, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I was so excited about talking about today is your dissertation and the practical applications of what you learned. So can you fill folks in on what you studied?
Absolutely. So I'll back up a little bit. My last 5 years, like I told you, was in student services. And that is an area of the organization in which you deal with a lot of conflict. Not that I wasn't a master at managing conflict whenever I was the principal of the building, but I got to deal with a lot of conflict that I didn't necessarily cause. And, I would work through different scenarios and coach and help and, you know, try to listen to, what parents were needing and what um, principals and assistant principals were needing, things that, we had gotten to this crossroads of, you know, a problem. And, I'll give you one particular example, and these are just little things that, came up during that time. And I remember, so it was right after COVID, and it was the year after the shutdown. So we were back in school with masks.
Okay.
And I remember a little girl, and this is kind of, putting together that relationship piece and learning from our mistakes and not being a disciplinarian, but trying to, understand where our students were coming from. So she was taking pictures of students that had it below their nose, and ironically, my son was a senior that year, and he was one of the pictures. That was a whole nother parent conversation later. But she was posting these online, and this is what kids do, right? And
Yeah.
so she was posting these things online, and she was, shaming and telling, the people that, that they needed to be better, all of these sorts of things. And so anyway, the assistant principal called me and she said, "Hey, I have a lot of parents that are upset about this. We need to figure out what we need to do. Your son's one of them." Great. And but I said, before we start like diving into discipline issues here, talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this happening? Why is she doing this? And so what we learned is that, she had a family member pass away from COVID.
Mm.
She was living with someone who had an immune system issue,
Mm.
and she was, having the courage to get to school and put her mask on. But, she was seeing things around her that didn't feel right, she didn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And but it changed like the perspective of the
Yeah.
assistant principal. And she's like, "Oh," and not that she didn't get consequences,
Right.
right? But we used it as a learning experience on how she could advocate for her needs versus the way that she
Yeah.
had decided to do that. And, and then of course we had to coach of how she would handle the other parents that their children were, so all of this, like this was constant. This was every day
Yeah.
where we were working through how to best manage these these issues, conflict, being more self-aware, all of those sorts of things.
Yes.
So, whenever I decided to go back to school, and I got my degree at Abilene Christian University in organizational leadership, and I'd already always had a thought in the back of my mind of what to do the dissertation in, and so I landed in self-awareness
Mm-hmm.
and conflict management. Self-awareness, it's the emotional intelligence piece with Daniel Goleman. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence. And so I was wondering, like, okay, so I have a few ideas about what this
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness thing is, but it's usually like it's the foundation and then they move on. So I really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to dive into that. And then I also wanted to dive into conflict management. I intuitively kind of knew, like whenever I was managing some things on at the campus level, of how to listen, how to understand perspectives, but I really wanted to dig in more because because I'll tell you, it's just it's so hard,
Mm-hmm.
and people lose their way because of conflict. And as we all know, it's not getting easier. It's
Right.
there, the pressure is just even more intense. The things that we're having to work through, the things that people are coming at us, with. And so I wanted to help fill the toolbox for myself as well as help fill the toolbox for others. So my dissertation it's a mouthful. I don't even have it memorized. So this is what it was. Examining the role of self-awareness in shaping constructive behaviors in conflict management. So that's what I landed on, and it's a principal perspective. So I did it from the leadership perspective because at the time that was, in they're getting, pressure from all different areas, but all educators do, like
Mm-hmm.
all the time. You're
Mm-hmm.
getting pressure from your families. You're getting pressure from, the administration above you, the, students. I mean, all of these sorts of things. And how do you actually manage yourself in those
Mm-hmm.
situations? So one of the classes that I took was on mediation. conflict management and mediation. And in that course, we took a assessment called the Conflict Dynamics Profile. Eckerd College and the Center of Creative Leadership created the tool. And what I loved about it, and I had, and I'd done conflict management, and I'd done some things with, the Thomas Kilmann model, other models and things like that. And they're all extremely important. The difference between this one was about behaviors, and it was about constructive behaviors, destructive behaviors, and then my favorite, hot buttons. So it gives you an assessment of how you do in each of these things. And then you kind of work through things that you're really good at that you need to lean into, and then things that you're not really great at and that, you need to do better, do better with.
Okay. And tell me about, in looking at that self-awareness and conflict management and did you use the tool with the principles? Okay. Keep going.
Yeah. So, I, first of all, I was going to say, whenever I was the director of student services, that's when you came into my life. You didn't know that, but you did. I learned words such as amygdala hijack and settling your glitter, all of those sorts of things by listening to the counselors who would come back from the Momentous Institute and share all the wonderful things that they were learning. And then also when you the Changing the Odds conference, I was able to see you the first time interview Brian Stevenson, which was amazing. Yeah. And but you kind of laid that foundation of like understanding that emotional piece. So for example, with constructive behaviors, it's things like whenever you are in a conflict, are you delaying your response so that you don't have that amygdala hijack? Are you understanding people's perspective? Like what else could be true? Where are they coming from? With these this concern. Being able to express your emotions, not being emotional, but being able to express emotions. Being able to reach out, being the bigger person, and taking charge of that.
It's so
in addition
nice to hear it broken down like that, Laura. Like, because I think of like, constructive qualities when you're solving conflict, and but it's fuzzy. But then when you're like, this is what that means, it's like it catches my attention. Okay, I think I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that self-awareness that you were talking about is understanding like your behaviors in conflict. And so that's what's so great about the assessment is that you can see what your strengths are. And then then there were some aha moments. And so I did use like you said, the tool with the principles, and we would go through their results and talk through it. And in addition to me gathering the research that I needed, they were constantly like learning about, their strengths and weaknesses. We would talk about different things that worked for them, as well as, things that they needed to do better. It's interesting, some of the pieces of the destructive behaviors, things like winning at all cost, not being able to like not being adaptable, avoiding, 'cause that's the most popular one, is being avoiding conflict. There's a whole list of them. But one of the things that I found in my research, and I also was able to do this with the leadership development at Meteor, probably about 70 different assessments and coaching conversations, and then of course with the the principles that I use for my research. And I don't know, across the United States or the world, what the CDP results would show, but over and over and over, one of the destructive behaviors is self-criticism.
Interesting.
Over and over and over, it spiked on all the principles that I, worked with. It spikes a lot. And so reflective thinking on the constructive side is a good thing.
Uh-huh.
But then if you just continue to ruminate and continue to just go down this like spiraling hole, then it becomes self-critical. And it doesn't help you solve problems. It doesn't help you uh, to show up well during conflict. So I was going to ask you, like, why do you think that spikes so hard and so high, that self-critical piece, whenever we're in conflict?
Ooh, that's so juicy. And well, first of all, let me say that as you were describing those two, I was like, oh, you can overlay that almost exactly on the nervous system work.
Mm-hmm.
That like the destructive behaviors or when we're in a survival state, how we might show up, and the constructive or when we're in that ventral vagal safe and connected nervous system state. That was the first thing that popped for me. And your question about the self-critical, am I using the right word? Is that the word you use?
Self-criticizing.
Yeah, self-criticizing being so prominent. It doesn't surprise me at all, because what I've noticed is that anytime you invite self-reflection, if you don't pair that with self-compassion, it spirals into self-criticism. So you almost have to teach self-reflection and self-compassion in order for people to use it to kind of ramp up those constructive behaviors versus just go into like a shame spiral.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. And it's funny. I love coaching and training just because I get great ideas from other people. And so one of the things that I have learned from others, because, what we do is you go through the assessment and then you go through your results. And then we're like, okay, what are the things, like, give some examples of, how this is working for you. And then let's talk about some of the areas that, you can improve on. And again, self-criticizing always comes up, it seems like. And I've learned from the people that I have worked with, just little tiny tips and tools. And I know this is, one of those things that we want to try to get out of this conversation, are those little tips and things that you can do to help yourself whenever your nervous system is out of whack. And one of the things, and you've probably used this, Michelle, and I'll be curious to see what you think about it, but one of the things is to talk to yourself in third person, like, Laura, let's think about this. And like, and talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend.
Oh,
Because if you talk to yourself like the ways that we can be critical of ourselves, like, you would never talk to your best friend like that. No, ever. Never. So why are we talking to yourself like that?
That's such a great tip, to actually talk to yourself in third person. Because that it shakes you out of that. Even more than the concept of, well, you'd never talk to your best friend like that. Because people almost always are like, no, of course I wouldn't. But it doesn't interrupt how they talk to themselves. But using that tip to be like, Michelle, come on, or Laura, come on, that is really helpful. What else?
Now, I don't know if there's any science behind this, but again, these are things that I pick up from other people, because that's the best way to learn.
Yeah,
is that your brain doesn't know the difference. That if it's a friend telling you these things, or if it's you telling so if you're talking to yourself in third person, that might help. I don't know. It's something that I have tried. In fact, I did that yesterday. So I was like, okay, Laura, Let's get it together here. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. So
Oh.
anyway, those sort of tips. And another tip with that self-criticizing piece is that, again, being reflective is so important. It's so important. Again, that's back to that self-awareness. We need to know how we're
Mm.
impacting and how we're showing up and how our words, all of those sorts of things. It's so important. But then we start to spiral and we start to ruminate. And some tips that I've heard from people that I've worked with is that, I'm going to let myself do this for 5 more minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're going to move on. Like
Put a timer on
recognizing it,
it.
naming it. Yeah, naming it, recognizing it, put a timer on it, and then do something that shifts your emotional being. And again, you do such a great job with all of these sorts of things. And I recently read Ethan Cross's book called Shift. It's his new one. He wrote Chatter. And he talks about how to get yourself out of that ruminating piece and how to, and, shifting your space,
Mm.
shifting, the senses of being able to, um, you know, listen to music, like all these different
Mm.
little tools. And he equates it to, we all need a toolbox, and we all need to, we all exercise, or we try to exercise, but it's not that the same things don't fit all of us. So what
Mm.
works, shifting your attention, shifting your perspective a lot. And I know that Dr. Helm talked about that perspective piece, and that is so, so important to ask, what else could be true here?
Mm.
What's the story that I'm telling myself? What's going, just being able to understand, someone, what is it called, when you step into someone others,
Mm-hmm.
shoes, and just get out of that spiral. So I
Mm.
don't know, what are some things that that makes you think about?
Oof. Well, first of all, I love that there's space for the ruminating, but it's time limited. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when I am caught in that like churn, it feels circular, but sometimes it feels productive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to ask myself which one it is. And if it feels
Mm-hmm.
circular, I try to move to the shift quicker. If I feel like something is working itself out and I'm moving through something, then I try to give it more space. But
Mm-hmm.
I love the timer. I love the, okay, I'm going to sit with this and then I'm going to shift. So,
Mm-hmm.
so cool for all those reasons. Love the embodied piece of everything you're talking about, like inviting the senses,
Mm-hmm.
music, smells, getting up and moving your body, all
Mm-hmm.
those things to me. Anytime we can invite the whole body to the party, or the spirit, the emotions, not just the mental facet, you
Mm-hmm.
always have a better shot at a fair fight
Mm-hmm.
when you can kind of bring it all to bear. So that feels powerful to me. And I think about like when my kids were little, and I knew they were spiraling because they were hungry or tired or upset or whatever. And there were times when you knew you couldn't meet them logic to logic,
Mm-hmm.
because they were just all emotion, or all unraveling. So often the reset was just a shift that could feel random, like putting on a
Mm-hmm.
piece of music that shifted
Mm-hmm.
their state, feeding, just meeting their
Yes.
needs. Like
Yes.
Glennon
Yes.
Doyle talks about how so many of her problems can be solved by a glass of water.
Yes.
Sometimes I just need a glass of water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's so engaging. The idea of,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, how prevalent the self criticism is, so we don't feel
Mm-hmm.
alone in the fact that we all go there, and then some ways to interrupt it.
Hi, I'm Katie Worden, producer of Oxygen for Educators. I want to spotlight our sponsor, TackyBox. TackyBox is an elementary school program that pairs innovative content with a tactile tool in daily practice to teach children to self-monitor their own words and actions and their responses to others. It's a proven tool that reduces behavior incidents by 66%. Through daily self-reflection, students build self-awareness, self-regulation, and meaningful connections. TackyBox is a light lift for teachers with a big impact on student well-being. Go to tackybox.com to learn more and become a TackyBox district.
What else? This is so
Yeah.
good, Laura. What else did you learn or have you been learning in your coaching around this
So
material?
it's interesting. One of my favorite parts of the conflict dynamics profile is what they called hot buttons. And this is back to your amygdala hijack. Like something happens, there's an event, and you get triggered. And they have so they have a list of
gotta hear
triggers
these.
that they have used. I can add to it pretty quickly. But like people, so it's other people's behavior that could cause a trigger.
Okay.
And what you have to do is this is where that self-awareness piece comes in. And again, this is why it's so fascinating to me. Because number one, I was like, oh, there's like a whole assessment on triggers. Like I'm not a horrible person. These are things that can happen.
Yeah.
And so I think that was aha for me that you can be triggered.
Normalized it.
And just normalize it.
Yeah.
Put some language around it, and then know that then you have, it's back to, Frankel and all the others, like you have a opportunity to respond. And if you respond in a destructive way, now you have the language around what those destructive behaviors could be, then it's going to get worse. If you lean into some of your strengths in the constructive area that you've learned about, or you're working on, then it can get better. Or we don't even have a conflict, even though you're triggered, you know how to work yourself through it. So hot buttons could be, when people are abrasive, people that are aloof, you can't really figure them out, can be a hot button. Hostile, of course. People, if you feel like you're micromanaged, that could be a hot button. People that are overly analytical and really into the details can be a hot button for some people, not everybody. Yeah. Some people really love those details. People that are self-centered can be a hot button for others. If they're unappreciative, unreliable, or untrustworthy. So when people,
good list.
I know, isn't it good? And it's really interesting too that, especially with educators, one of my research showed that one of the things that popped that was really kind of across the board was self-centered behavior. And so because, the educators that I worked with were so focused on what's right for kids, what do we need to do, the mission and the vision of the school, like this is, we're all in this together, and self-centered behavior could be a trigger. And I understand, I completely understand that as well. And so now you've got the self-awareness to know, okay, that kind of behaviors could trigger me. What are my tools? What can I do to help? And that's when you lean into those constructive behaviors, delaying your response, not going right back at them, trying to understand, perspectives, all of those sorts of things. So anything on that list that you're like,
So many. But like,
do you run hot, Michelle? Do you run hot? I run a little hot.
I run, well, it's exactly to your point about triggers. Like there's just certain behaviors that bring out the spicy in me that wouldn't be my normal kind of state, but in the face of those, I get activated. And it makes me think about like how much relief there is in just being able to know you're in a triggered state. And that doesn't mean it's truth with a capital T. And it also doesn't mean you're going to stay there forever. Like the way the assessment and the way you're talking about it like makes it so clear. These are like fluid situations that when we get more aware of what's happening, it feels less personal, and it also feels less permanent, which is so nice.
And that's why that, one of the, like the gate into constructive responses is that delay, like pausing.
Yeah.
Pausing, taking a breath, not feeling like you have to, react to that moment, gather more information. And I remember you, and again, Michelle, you've come and you've spoken to our leadership group at Meteor Education, and I to this day will use the technique. Will you talk about it? The technique that like, and you can hide, like especially on Zoom, you can hide and like nobody knows.
Nobody knows what we're talking about unless they're watching. But I will tell everybody real quick. So there's a breath technique where you inhale and you touch your thumb to your pinky, and then you exhale and open your hand up, and then you go to ring finger and then exhale, and then middle finger and exhale. And each time you exhale, you're opening your hand, and then pointer and exhale, and then you go back, or you can start with pointer. It doesn't really matter. But the point is you are engaging tactily while you're also slowing your breathing down. And what has been so powerful about that technique for me and others, sounds like for you too, Laura, is that you can practice it when you're in a calm state. And then if you get triggered, you can just start touching your fingers, and you get like your body remembers that that's something that calms you down, even if you can't bring the breath in right away. And you can do it anywhere, and no one needs to know you're doing it. You can hide it behind a crossed arm or under your leg, or however you need to do it. It just kind of brings you back into your body and brings you into that more rhythmic, regulated breath, which anytime we take a deep breath, it's a sign to our nervous systems that we're safe, because in the way back times, if we were ever in true life threat, we would never stop to take a deep breath. We would run the heck away from that saber-toothed tiger, so to speak. So that to me is like, oh, that's what all this breathing chit-chat's about. It's not soft. It's not fluffy. It's a literal signal to our nervous system that there's a distinction between the saber-toothed tiger and a snarky email or whatever,
Absolutely.
Because if not, our like you said, with the voice, with how we talk to ourselves, like our nervous systems don't distinguish. So in present day 2025, most of us are walking around with fight, flight, or shutdown a majority of the day, as if we're being chased by something that could kill us. And our bodies aren't designed to sustain that. Those are supposed to be reactions that come up when we need them, and then we go back to baseline. And instead, we're kind of all living in that. We've normalized that state as this is just how life is. Oh, that's exhausting.
Yeah, it is. It is. But having those just, again, giving yourself permission to, and again, I, for years would just be like, why do I get so wound up about this kind of thing? Or, and just judge myself, and just like, I really wish I was a cool cat, and I'm not. I just, I really want to be like, just, like this stuff doesn't, bother me, but it does. And then to get the language around like, okay, you're triggered. It's okay.
Yeah.
You've got some tools to help you with that, because you do want to respond better. You don't want to make this worse. But now you've got some language and some tools to help you with that. Do I do this, perfectly? Absolutely not. But it is something that I can lean back on, and rather than asking, why did I even do that? Okay, what do you want to do differently next time? And just continually to, grow with it.
There's so much packed into what you just said, like the having the awareness, knowing it's a trigger, developing the capacity to extend that space between stimulus and response, like Viktor Frankl talks about, like this is happening, and before I respond, can I extend that space and really assess, and then choosing, am I going to show up in a way that makes this better or worse? So cool. I think you're a cool cat. Just
Thanks,
for the
Michelle.
record.
You're a cool cat too.
Thank you. Anything else that came from that? This has been so strategy rich. Is there anything else that came from your studies?
That's my love language, is to find good strategies. And again, we're all in this experience together. One of the things that I moved from, that being aware of your values and your how best you work, and then understanding your triggers and the behaviors that you do really, really well, and then things that you need to work on, all of those sorts of things kind of mixed up. The last piece of the research was, so how do we get better? And how do we learn these sorts of things? And so as you well would probably predict, is that we learn best with others. We learn best in community, and real life work. And so spent some time with each of the principals talking about, in educators, how do you best learn? And it's always, you have your own reflective pieces, but being able to learn with others, to that social learning. And even, and you use this term a lot, is being able to talk about these sorts of things, and what do you call it, co-regulating? And feeding off of each other, and knowing that you're not alone in this work. Sometimes even being in a classroom, all day, or the principal, the only person in that position, in the school district or in that school, it can be really lonely.
Yeah.
So just being able to get together and work through, what's working, what's not working. Sometimes it lifts. Well, I know this always happened to me, is that I get so like focused in on what was happening, and just being able to bounce ideas off of someone else and hear some of their perspectives. It gets you it gets you into problem solving mode, rather than that ruminating piece.
That is so rich. And it also makes me wonder about the relation between that community piece and the self-criticism piece. Like, are we less likely to sort of spiral in self-criticism if we're in community around it? What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it helps. It helps you get out of that ruminating, just to be able to talk to someone and get it out, and get it out in the world, but rather than inside your head. And being able to work with someone on, they may have an idea, or sometimes they're just listening. And it's just, that social learning is so powerful. It's just so powerful, that we know we're not in this by ourselves, that we're not in this alone, and that we can work together, because we all want to do a really great job. We all want to show up well for, our students and our colleagues and, our community. And, but it's hard. It's really, really hard. And we can't do it by ourselves.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
We have to have each other. And
Yeah.
and especially in education, there's just such a like-minded, people that we're in this work together, and we are, in the arena together, and it's hard. But being able to, lean on each other is so, so, so critical. And share tools, share things that are working, share things that, work for me, and I might be able to pick up. I mean, like I said, I've picked up so much from just talking to you through the years, and and listening to different things. And let's talk about podcasts, let's talk about different things that we're learning, all those sorts of things. It's just, I don't know, it's empowering.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets you out of that cycle
Yeah.
of hopelessness.
Yeah. To me, it like changes my relationship with struggle. Like it makes it feel like, no, this is life. It's not like life starts on the other side of struggle. If I'm in community, it just makes it feel like this is what we do. And some days I'm struggling more than you, and other days you're struggling more than me. But the juice is in how do we show up for each other and ourselves, not in the elimination of the struggle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So because I know how nerdrific you are, and I am the same. And I know that you are very devoted to your own personal learning and personal growth. Like, what are your go-to strategies to ground yourself and support yourself around everything, but maybe even in particular self-awareness and conflict? Like, how do you navigate the waters?
Yeah. My biggest go-to or two particular, well, a lot of them, but my biggest one is delay that response. And that is something that I have to continually practice, is not blurting out what I really feel in that second, because usually it's, from a place of fear, or, shame or whatever it is, or defensiveness. And I don't want to show up that way. Have I? Yes. But I want to, so delaying, pausing, using those tools, the tools that you talked about, the breathing, asking for, you know what? I need to get back with you on that. Can you give me just, let's, circle up tomorrow, and just giving myself a bit of space to just figure some things out, and, reflect, and, calm down that nervous system, just calm down, because I'll show up just a lot better if I'm, in a more calm state. And then the other one is, asking, because we get really hooked into the stories that we tell ourselves. And so really trying to understand what else could be true, asking, help me understand. I don't think I'm getting this. What are you thinking? And that, not only does it help you delay your response because it buys a little bit of time, but you also can respond in such a more intelligent way. You know where they're coming from. You know what, and instead of just, just rattling off all the defenses and rattling off, what you're feeling, the conversation that you can have then is much more rich and meaningful, because you understand where they're coming from. You understand, like, okay, you get a little bit of data, and like, okay, all right, now I think I understand a little bit better about how maybe we can move to the next, phase of this conversation, or whatever it is. So those are, again, I use a lot of the others, but those are kind of my go-tos is just to delay, give myself a second, and then understand the perspective of the other person.
Makes me think of the story you told about the girl who was taking the pictures, like, and your instinct to be like, talk to her,
Just
find
talk
out
to her.
what's behind. And I can't remember who says that curiosity is like the gateway to
Yes.
a lot of other things, like empathy, creativity, innovation. Like it's a bridge.
It absolutely is. And, you know, being able to go into situations, issues, good or bad, with curiosity and just a love of learning and understanding the other person is I'm better whenever I'm in that state of just understanding, where other people are coming from.
So lovely. Did we cover everything that you wanted to hit on today, or did we miss anything?
No, I think thank you for letting me put my dissertation out into the world. It was one of those, again, it was a lifelong, work for me. And then as I continued to mentor, coach, and support educators, we just don't get those tools a lot of times. And I really, really wanted to understand behaviors in conflict a little bit better. I don't even like the word conflict, but it's one of those things that we have to, we're finding ourselves in more and more these days. And so what are the things that actually I can control? I can't control what's going on.
Right.
I can't control how people are showing up, in my space. But what I can control are my behaviors.
Yeah.
And just being able to dig into that a little bit more with the conflict dynamics profile and the self-awareness piece, and then also understanding how we can continually get better as we work in community with each other was kind of that sums it all up as far as what I learned. And hopefully it'll help.
It's so valuable what you chose to study, and so timely. So timely. I think that our relationship to ourselves, to each other, and to conflict are going to define the next 10, 20 years for sure, if they aren't already.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Laura. I could talk to you for 10 hours straight and not get bored. I just find you so interesting and smart and delightful and self-reflective. And so thank you for finishing the dissertation. I know it was hard and you did it. Yay.
I did do it. And thank you, Michelle. What you all are doing with this podcast and then the other work that you're doing is just so needed. And, it's a nice break and respite in my week to listen to who you have on, and then just the way that you and Chris reflect on things, and the pulling things out at the end. This is just a really incredible space that you're providing for educators, and thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll talk to you soon. Always welcome to come back and share more of what you're learning. And thank you for being you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you.
You called it about the masterclass. She has clearly really sat with this material and not just kept it in the dissertation zone, but really pulled it into the application space. And it was so fun to learn from her. What stood out to you? What's going to be in your head for weeks to come?
So I would like to start with your gobsmacked moment, if that's okay. The statement that really got you and got me was, we're depleted or out of balance when we overuse our strengths. And that just, I really had the moment of like, I could see the clouds parting and the light coming in and hear the angels of, the choirs of angels singing, because it made so much sense to me.
That was your microdosing. That wasn't.
I've never thought about it that way. I've just never thought about it that way. And so you actually made the comment that you were having an emotional reaction and you didn't know why. So knowing you've thought about it since then. And I'm just curious if you figured that out, or just what that made you, why did your jaw drop?
Yeah, it was for sure because it's not in the lexicon like it should be. Like, I have heard that, but I hadn't thought about it in years. And it's not as much as strengths-based work is talked about, the overuse of strengths is just underrepresented in the conversation. And so I think I think the reaction was, when your body hears truth, not just your mind, but like, I feel like my body heard something that felt true. And it felt like one of those truths that gives you like a different way to explore and examine your own way you're going through the world. So yeah, it really captured me, and it just feels like like the overuse of strengths also to me feels like it's in line with just the kind of grind culture. Like, if something is working or good or whatever, you just like take it so far that it can take you into the depletion zone, or into you cross from helpful to hurtful. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying it well because I feel like it's still kind of rattling around, but it's a big concept. It's a big thing to think about.
It's a big concept, and it really hit home for me, especially during this time. So just for context for listeners, I have 2 jobs and am currently experiencing some just difficult family circumstances at home, and just knew intuitively I needed a break, that there was just too much to focus on right now. So I'm so grateful that my company, D Magazine, is allowing me to take a short leave of absence to just care for my family, be home, take care of myself. But hearing her say that helped me understand why I need this time, because I made the choice because I knew intuitively it was the right thing to do, but I felt like Laura gave me the words to understand why.
Whoa. That's going to touch her.
I hope so. It was really, really helpful to me. And so I wanted to say that out loud, because I'm sure I'm not the only person that feels that way. And it felt to me a little bit like that might be a secret to well-being, to think about it from that lens.
Yeah. Because there's a whole lot of narrative of like, lean into strengths. So the notion that you could actually take that too far and that could cause you distress. Whoa. Fascinating.
So I wonder if anyone else is hearing angels sing.
Please email us and let us know if you're also microdosing. I mean,
you're the one who said you had a case of the Fridays, not me. Okay, focus.
It's coming out.
What else came up for you?
Well, I loved that, like so many of our conversations, she was just unapologetic about relationships being at the center. And being the priority. And I loved how she talked about when she lost her way in all of these different roles, it was because she was focused on the wrong thing. like that also felt actionable to really look at like, where's my focus? Yeah.
And I think the comment you made was focusing on relationships is the nucleus of being proactive.
Sure. I have no idea.
I loved that. I just loved it.
Yeah.
All of that conversation was helpful to me. And I really appreciated in this particular, you could tell she is also a coach and in that space because she kept volleying right back to you and putting you in the hot seat. And as it turns out, you have a lot of insight to share, my friend.
All this time you thought you were working with the dum-dum. The truth comes out about your worry. It's okay. I'll keep striving, but not over striving, as we learned from Dr. Laura.
That's good.
Go ahead.
No, bring it on.
I was just gonna bring into the conversation the part about self-criticism showing up really strongly, especially with educators. I thought that was quite something to hear because it's like in her research. It's not just like anecdotally. And I didn't know if it would be useful to maybe share a little bit about how Kristen Neff talks about self-compassion, because I do think self-reflection combined with self-compassion is a key to not getting into that self-critical loop that's not productive.
Please do talk about it, because that was another piece for me that like I just kind of went, oh, guilty as charged.
Yeah,
because if I had to pick one, I just think that's a huge piece for really self-reflective people. So yes, please share.
Huge piece. Okay, so the way Kristen Neff defines self-compassion is that you notice your own suffering, you feel moved by it. And I like to think of this as steps. Like you notice your own suffering, step one. You feel moved by it. Many of us do not allow ourselves to do that. And then you extend warmth and care as you would to a friend. That's her definition. And then there's three kind of main components. The first is self-kindness versus self-judgment. The second one is common sense of humanity versus isolation. So what that means is like understanding that suffering is universal, and much of what we experience is universal because we're much more likely to go into self-critical spiral if we think it's about us or we're the only ones, or those sort of narratives. So common sense of humanity versus isolation. And then the third is mindfulness versus over-identification. So really kind of like being in the moment, seeing the bigger picture versus like getting hyper-identified with any one aspect. And then the last thing I wanted to share is a practice she has that I use all the time, and I find it supremely useful. It's a 3-step process as well. The first is you say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. And I have to tell you, very often I never have to do steps 2 or 3. Just saying that to myself, something lifts for me. And I think it's the acknowledgement, and then also the moment part, like that it's not permanent, that it'll pass. So this is a moment of suffering. The second, suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself is the third. So this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself. And you can just literally kind of like rinse and repeat. It seems so simple, but it's very, very effective. And again, all of that is Kristen Neff's work. She's a fantastic thinker in that space. She's who I would recommend for rabbit holes if you want to learn more about self-compassion.
Excuse me while I take a note.
She also has some great meditations on her website that are specifically about self-compassion. And she's just a super interesting person. We could do in fact, we should actually ask her to come on. She's just a remarkable human and person and thinker. So
that thought made me think about Alex Vesely saying the purpose of life is to learn to love and to learn to suffer. Mm-hmm. And that's a good tool for that mission. Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. Mm-hmm. It also made me think about, for listeners, most listeners know we're associated with Tacky Box, the elementary school program that does teach self-reflection. And it made me think that we need to think how we incorporate that teaching around compassion. Mm-hmm. I don't know which one of you said it, but self-awareness is the foundation, but without self-compassion, it can become rumination and self-criticism. Mm-hmm. So that just really, that grabbed me, just that particular statement. Yeah. I also really liked your response to a question that Laura asked, where you said you appreciated the concept of circular versus productive ruminating and setting that time limit. It just, that resonated with me a lot. That's a strategy that I've used just in stressful times, that time limit piece, and not so much in the rumination, but when I'm taking a risk just in life. Like specifically what came up for me was when I started Tacky Box and I sold my house and lived off the equity and committed to a year of no income to just get it off the ground. And that's scary as a single mom. Yeah. But it was my sister's idea. She suggested just break it up into chunks. You've committed to a year, see where you are at the end of the year, and then you can extend your decision, or you can, and anytime I would put that time limit on it, it changed the heart palpitations when you wake up in the middle of the night, because I would just, I'm not to my time limit yet. So that was similar.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that was Laura's point, the time limit piece, and the talking to yourself in third person.
I liked that.
That
too.
was so great. Like I could totally picture her being like, Laura, you have 15 minutes and then we're going to shift. And then, letting herself feel what she feels and then doing what she knows to do to shift herself into a different perspective or a nervous system state or whatever. So cool.
Do you do that? Talk to yourself in the third person?
I have, yes. I don't know that I do it like on the regular, like that Seinfeld episode where the guy talks about himself. I forget his name now, but I don't do that. Michelle has a meeting after this. But I do love that nurturing and the way she talked about like it kind of goes to Kristen Neff's part about, talk to yourself as you would a close friend. It's like you can, by moving into that third person, you can give yourself a little bit more grace like we do with everyone else. Just thought that was an interesting and actionable trick.
Agreed. What else is on your list?
Well, she so elegantly spoke into the power of delaying the response and how it matters so much in her own personal life. And I mean, if people wanted just one thing to work on the whole rest of this year or next year, if they just worked on extending that space between what happens and how we react or respond, that would be more than enough. And it would change their life. Like it would change how they show up and then the ripple effect of whatever their reaction or response is. So I thought she spoke to that super elegantly.
I loved that too. That hit home for me as well.
Anything else
again,
on your
masterclass.
That was a masterclass.
I liked the discussion around learning best in community.
Yeah.
And it actually made me think about our wonderful producer, Katie, and the discussion we had this week about, we've been focusing on protecting her time because she is doing so many things, but she was so adamant about needing to go drive all over Texas to go have these meetings with educators and be present and in the room. And to me, that was a perfect example. And I liked those words that we learn best in community. And that's what Katie's doing.
We learn best in community. We heal best in community. It changes everything about our experience in the world when we feel in sync with other people or out of sync.
Loved that. And then the last note that I made, I wanted to have a nerd contest with you and see if you looked up the conflict dynamics profile afterwards. I emailed them and asked them if I could purchase it. I didn't hear back yet, but I'll let you know when I figure out how.
I thought you were going to come on this podcast and have already taken it.
I tried. That was my goal.
100%.
But I did look at it and just like do a little self-evaluation about what are mainly my destructive
What did you come up with?
Mine are very, very obvious to me. Let me see where I wrote them down.
While you're looking, just to remind the listeners, it's like destructive behaviors in the face of conflict, constructive behaviors, and then hot buttons. That's
okay,
what
my
Laura was saying.
my destructive are hiding emotions and self-criticizing.
Okay, interesting.
For sure. Yeah.
Hiding emotions and self-criticizing. Okay.
What would did you look to see what yours would be?
I didn't look in the vein of like, what are mine? So obviously that's my problem. I actually looked for what are yours. No, I'm just kidding.
And did you come up with the same ones I came up with?
No, I'm totally kidding. I did not do that. I kind of was just like, I want to take it. It would be fun to take it and then do like a coaching session with Laura. We ought to do the three of us and then do a coaching session with Laura and see what we learn. That would be super fun.
That would be fun. I was just appreciative that she shared the tool. And I also liked when she talked about that tool, she said she was looking for a tool for herself and one to share with others and help others. So that's just a wise lens to be using. So this was just really powerful for me. I'll be thinking about it for a long time. And I've already made some specific changes in interactions as a result of this podcast. So thank you both.
And anything you would share, or it's none of our business?
Sure. Just mainly business. The delayed response, because what I realized that I do is I do that on the regular in business or with friends, but I had just the night before not offered that to my son. He late at night told me his dad wasn't going to be able to take him to a PT session in the morning, and instead of taking a beat, I just said, I am not getting up and taking you at 6 a.m. This is not going to work, and it just, and then, he texted his dad and said, Mom's mad, you got to get me. So he did, but I just thought that wasn't very kind. And so I called Craig and apologized the next day. And anyway, but then I went into self-criticizing mode. I'm still thinking about it because I wish I would have taken a beat. So there you go.
That's so relatable. Oh my gosh. Love it. Well, anything else?
No, I'm super grateful.
Yeah, same here. Anytime I'm in the presence of Laura, she makes me feel safe as just a fellow traveler human being, because she's she's humble and learned, and like that combination just feels like good to be in her presence. And she makes me think, and I can't think of a more generous combination. And I love that she cares so much and has such deep roots in education, and hopefully her hard work getting that dissertation over the finish line is going to serve people listening. And we would love to hear from you and hear how, if at all, things are popping for you from the podcast that you're building into your own life. If you have people that we should be interviewing or topics that we should be covering, we want to hear from you. And a huge thanks to you, Chris, and of course to Katie. And I guess we'll see everybody next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Oxygen for Educators. Please like, share, and follow, and if inclined, leave us a 5-star review so that we can keep making content for you. Let us hear from you if you know someone we should interview or a topic we should cover.